Well, I came to St. Louis. I was born in a little town called Edwardsville, Illinois in 19, whatever you call it. I don't want to show my age, but 1142 is a good start. Uh, and I came to the College of Pharmacy, which was a 4-story factory building with a 4-foot campus around it. And there was very little social life there, and the only thing there was really fraternity life. So started looking into the fraternity activities, and Kappa Psi stood out. At that time, I think there was only 2 other fraternities and 1 sorority at that time, back in the early 60s. And I decided that's one way of getting into the group of pharmacists, and also trying to figure out how to fit into the College of Pharmacy was through a fraternity. So Kappa Psi was my choice. The fact that Kappa Psi had a display on one of the main floors there, and they were the largest fraternity at that time. There was another fraternity. There was a Jewish fraternity, then I think Phi Delta Chi was another one, and then the sororities. But Kappa Psi seemed to have the most going for them and had the most exposure. And they did pledge rather aggressively compared to the other ones, and their membership was probably 3 times bigger than the other ones, and that probably had a lot to do with it. But no particular individual that I can remember. Well, the dean at that time, Dr. James Thayer, who was a Kappa Psi member, I heard him speak at some of the different social functions and fraternity functions, and I was always impressed with James Dean. He was James Thayer. I mean, he was a well-respected individual, and he was one of 3 men in the United States that held and knew the formula for Coca-Cola. So he had a little bit of history in him. We also had another professor there that I think was a faculty member at Kappa Psi, and he's the one that formulated Listerine. So St. Louis College of Pharmacy has some history behind it. It was my pledge brothers that one of my pledge brothers came from Edwardsville, the same high school that I went to, and I developed a roommate in college that also joined Kappa Psi, and there was a couple other Kappa Psi pledges that we all kind of stuck together, because the members at that time were hazing was not well chaperoned during those days. Some of the things we had to do wouldn't pass the litmus test these days, and I also wouldn't approve of them. So actually, my involvement with membership basically was my pledge brothers, and we pretty much stuck together all the way through the fraternity until graduation. We had a fairly large class. I think we had 15 or 16 pledge brothers at that time, and that was 1960. So at that time, I think that was a good number. There's one that I'm not a big computer guy, but I only got 1 younger daughter, but I got 5 daughters. She put me on Facebook. I don't follow it too much, but I do get hits once in a while from a couple of members of my old college graduating team, and they happen to be Kappa Psi. And it's just through communication on Facebook that I hear from them once in a while. I'll respond back to them. Otherwise, not really, to be honest with you. Well, you know, I had a great run in Kappa Psi. When I was a regent in the local chapter. I was a satrap in the province. I was a national officer, and then because of some unfortunate situations with the fraternity, and I happened to be at the wrong place at the right time. And I say that with tongue in cheek because it really was an asset to my growth. I held the position of executive secretary and eventually went on up to be Grand Regent. But during my executive secretary days, I guess the association with past Grand Regents like Campbell and Patrick Wells, Dewey Gardner came after that, but those were some good days and good relationships. And one of the past Grand Regents, Dr. Gunsprandio from Purdue, didn't know it at the time when I was in college, but we were both from the same town, Edwardsville, Illinois, We both went to St. Louis College of Pharmacy. I didn't know at the time. And we both held the position of Grand Regent in Kappa Psi. So during fraternity years, when he was still active and still involved in the fraternity, we communicated a lot during that time. And he was around when we went through some problems with the fraternity in 1970, and that's when I became executive secretary due to the death of the current executive secretary, Gerald Henney. Success is doing the right thing at the right time for the right cause. I always took pride in saying that I accomplished something or I did something because it was right, and I wasn't trying to find excuses or trying to find ways to manipulate a position or an action just so it benefited me. I always tried to work toward the goal that whatever I did or whatever I accomplished, it was the right thing to do for the right purpose. So I would say success would do what you want to do, go forward with your goals, and fight for what you feel is right, and wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and feel good about yourself. The fraternity life, I contributed my fraternity involvement to my success in my profession. I feel that I was very successful in my profession. I was very active in organizations, very active in the community. I owned pharmacies. I had a philosophy about if you don't pay your dues, don't open your mouth. So I joined every organization that I could think of so I could open my mouth and speak my piece. And beside my accomplishments in Kappa Psi, one of my goals also was to become a member of the Board of Pharmacy, which I did. In Missouri, I became a member of the Board of Pharmacy, was appointed by the governor for a 5-year term, ended up spending 8 years in that position. And to date, I think I'm the only board member for the Missouri Board of Pharmacy that held the position of president 5 consecutive years. And I took that position very seriously, and I feel I helped the profession in my accomplishments in that, as well as I feel I was responsible for some of Kappa Psi's success and how I dealt with the position of executive secretary when it was handed to me. I realized sitting on the other side of the table, especially when I was the chair and the president and at hearings, that there were things out there that were not necessarily wrong, but because of different situations, pharmacists got themselves in a bind and ended up doing things that they wouldn't have done under normal circumstances. And I always tried to help them out. I always told them at hearings, I could be your best friend or your worst enemy. Just tell me the truth and let's try to work them out. So I think I gained a reputation of being a fair and a good board member, and pharmacists felt comfortable talking to me about situations because they know if they leveled with me, I leveled with them, and in most situations we could work things out and try to do it to the best advantage of them. I really wasn't out to get anybody or to prove a point. I was just out. I basically thought I was there to help them. Even though the goal of the board members of any licensure or a regulatory board was to protect the consumer, I realized that. But sometimes pharmacists got themselves in a situation that wasn't necessarily always their fault. Now the ones that never learned a lesson or that did create a problem, I was the worst enemy. Well, I guess it was the ability to communicate to people. I consider myself in my younger years an introvert. I think I advanced to be an extrovert after my graduation and during my fraternity activities ongoing and my activity in the profession. So I think it opened my mind up to be more of a communicator and also more of a listener. you can get yourself in a lot of trouble when you see your lips move, and you can learn a lot when you just listen a lot. And I found that pretty much an asset in the fraternity when I was addressing some of the. Well, at that time I owned business. I owned drugstores, and I was handed a situation with the death of the executive secretary in 1971 that pretty much I took on, and I had to manipulate my time appropriately between business, family, and the fraternity. But I always enjoyed challenges. And I had a good staff in my pharmacies, and my family life was, my kids were young at that time, and I guess I was blessed in some way by God or somebody, because we were able to get through it. And at that time, no major disasters, and everybody came out whole in the whole thing. I mean, my business didn't suffer that much. The fraternity, I was able to do what I wanted to do to accomplish for the fraternity after about 18 months to kind of put it back on good grounds. And my family life still exists because my girls were still doing what they wanted to do. They were figure skating, they were cheerleaders, they were doing what all young girls do, and the family moved on. Yeah, I got involved in long-term care in nursing homes, and I serviced 300 nursing home beds. And I had a pharmacy in a nursing home, and then I had 2 retail pharmacies, and then I closed them up. The one of them is still operating. There's still a Fitzpatrick pharmacy in St. Louis County, actually a little town called Ellisville or Baldwin. It's still part of St. Louis County. It'll be, I don't know, 45 years old, and it's still going on. I sold it to one of my pharmacists there. But I was in pharmacy when it was fun. When they called you doc, you come in, and it was fun, enjoyed. You helped people. You accomplished a lot. It's a good living. When the insurance companies got involved in the late 80s and early 90s, they started dictating reimbursement and telling your customers where to go with mail order and everybody else. I come to the conclusion that I had to make a move, and that's when I decided to sell my pharmacies and basically retire, I thought. And 6 months later, I was picked up by a major healthcare company to become a compliance officer and get involved in a regulatory end of pharmacy, and I enjoyed that. If you go back to the history of Kappa Psi and you go back to the old mask, you'll see some articles by me that I wrote at the request of various historians and executive directors, and basically probably the biggest challenge for me and for anybody if they would have been in that position at that time was when the fraternity ran into a terrible financial situation that the Grand Officers and Exec Committee were totally unaware of until a death occurred. And we basically, and I don't want to really get into it because nothing's accomplished by that, but we were basically broke, and we had to make some changes, and we had to cancel GCD, and we had to make some changes in the central office and with some printing equipment and everything else, and that was all accomplished. And we got back on ground 18 months later. We had we were on good grounds in the black, and able to progress forward. And that's when I told the exec committee that find another executive secretary, that I was going to go ahead and accomplish my goal, and that my goal was to become Grand Regent. The experience of owning a business and being exposed to business, it was just I was a retail entrepreneur, and you find out very fast when you're the last one getting paid how to run a business and how to take care of the books. And it was just putting the fraternity back into a business mode, and eliminated some of the liabilities, and and trying to work out a practical budget and go forward with the goals of the current executive committee. And it's, as far as what happened and how it happened and everything else, it's really immaterial. There's nothing gained by talking about it. It happened, and we got out of it, and we're doing good. From what I understand currently, the fraternity's in the best shape it has ever been in. And I know there are people out there that like Norm Campbell and Patrick Wells and even Dewey Gardner. I've received great compliments from them about the past, and they realized what was done and how it was done, and they appreciated that. The generation going forward from them really don't know much about it. There's really no need to really get involved in it, because it doesn't accomplish anything. And maybe if they did, some of them would be a little more appreciative of the accomplishments of some of us. But it is what it is. We're all happy, and the fraternity's in great shape. You know, I really don't know that there's any one individual. I was always kind of they always called me the mystery man when it came to my personal life and my business life. And fraternally, I would probably think Norm Campbell, Wells, and Dewey would be the ones that really know me, because Dewey wasn't, but Wells and Campbell were around during the rough days. But Dewey came in afterwards. He came in after I was done Grand Regent. He came in there, and we did communicate a lot. In fact, I visited him a lot. Him and his wife and kids, our families got together a lot. So I think that Dewey might know me the best in a fraternity way, but as far as what my involvement in the fraternity, probably Campbell and Wells. The other people in the fraternity, Porter, McGarry, and Flaherty, they all got involved with me, and were able to learn about me, and from hearing what the past was, able to appreciate how we got to where we're at, and why we're there where we're at. Business-wise, I think if you look at my resume, you're going to find out I was very active professionally, and I was very active in a lot of organizations. And like I said before, my philosophy is, if you don't pay your dues, don't voice your opinion. I paid a lot of dues and voiced my opinion a lot of times, and I was very outspoken, but I was always out for the consumer. You know, I always felt that that healthcare was a specialty, and that I was glad to be part of it, and I did what I can to help out in that area. Family-wise, I guess my family would be the best in that situation. My 5 daughters have been very loyal to me. I was married 25 years, and like some people, things happen and you get divorced, but I have a very good relationship with my 5 daughters, 12 grandkids, and 1 great-grandson. So the reason I moved from Missouri to Texas was because of them. And we're doing very fine. I'm a cancer survivor, 12 years cancer-free, so I feel that I'm blessed health-wise and with a very loving family. So I feel very good about it. Well, personally, I think the challenge that I was given in 1971, I think that was one big challenge that not everybody could have accomplished, I don't feel. But I'm sure there were people out there that, given the chance, may have been able to get through it. But I poured everything I had into it, and I accomplished in 18 months bringing an organization from deep red to above black, and putting it back on ground to where they could progress forward and move on with their growth. And I know there are people out there, like I said, Campbell and Wells and Gardner, and I'm sure Flaherty and McGarry and Porter, because of what they heard happen, they feel the same way. And to me, that's my biggest accomplishment in the fraternity. I stayed active in the fraternity after graduation for 20 years. You know, I was active with Kappa Psi well into the early 80s, and then I realized that this younger generation and I don't see eye to eye on everything, and I said I walk the talk. Now turn it over to the new ones and run with it and do good. And I'll have to say I'm satisfied with the way the fraternity has turned out. Yeah, I have been honored. I was given quite a few honors. I got Man of the Year and Pharmacist Man of the Year award. I got the Pharmacist King of Courtesy. Some people laugh about that, but I am pretty kind of a nice guy. And actually, the Man of the Year award didn't come from my alma mater. It came from the Kansas City Colleges of Pharmacy. But I'm a past president of the Alumni Association, the St. Louis College of Pharmacy. Past board member of the State Board of Pharmacy. I received quite a few honors of the State Association. Up here you'll see I got a recognition for innovative pharmacy practice. I got the Boa Hygia Award. There's another award up there that came from the State Association. So I've been honored with NABP. I've been active in NABP for the last, well, let's see, probably from 89 to probably, what is that, 10, 20, 30, nearly 30 years. I've been active in NABP, and they honored me as maybe an honorary president in their organization a few years back. And this year I went to my last NABP annual meeting because I can't take traveling like I used to take traveling. Me and airplanes just don't get along, but I've enjoyed my association with NABP. A lot of the members of NABP, in fact, I took my reciprocation from Missouri to Illinois from Fred Mahaffey, who was the first executive secretary of NABP in Chicago, and he asked me 3 questions. He asked me the generic ingredient of Nupercano, which was Dibucane, I still remember. Well, when I retired from owning drugstores, I was picked up by a major healthcare company and made a corporate compliance officer, and I had, like I said, 1,800 employees under me for compliance. And because I was hired by the board of directors, I was not under the thumb of corporate officers, so I didn't have to yield to the pressure that they put on people because of trying to make the public happy, since they were a public company on a stock exchange. But the employees that I had responsible for compliance, they always knew that they could communicate with me, and they always knew that Fitz was there to help them out. And there was a survey taken at one time with that company. I went up there temporarily in '96 or '97 it was, and I found out that temporarily is a long terminology if you don't pay attention to it. So in 2009 I decided that I overdid my temporary stay and retired for the second time. But during that time I was well respected by the employees, and there was a survey done on who at corporate could you rely on and always communicated with you and you had respect for. And there was a lot of top brass up at that corporate level, and I came out #1 up there, and I felt very good about that. I was an employee's person. I was out to help the employee, and I wanted to do the right thing with the employees. When I retired, I received many acclamations and emails and comments from employees throughout the organization. We were in 46 states. Our pharmacies were, and I was pretty proud of that people respected me that way. And since retiring, still going to different pharmacy functions like NABP, mainly I run into people and they say, "Are you that Fitz from Omnicare? Or are you that Fitz from Kappa Psi that signed my certificate?" And I can't tell you how well that makes an individual feel, because if there's nothing more important to an individual is to feel that he or she is respected and remembered by people that they work with and dealt with. I guess the conventions, even though I was handled a pretty difficult challenge, Initially, when I became Grand Regent, I traveled a lot and I attended a lot of province meetings, and I did that prior, but I did more when I was a Grand Regent. It was some of the Grand Council conventions, taking my family, taking my kids, my girls. My 5 girls were running around the pool in Scottsdale, Arizona at our 100th anniversary. And there were some good times. Philadelphia, '76. My girls were standing in the Philadelphia Square where they rang the bell at noon, and there was the big celebration on July 4th. And there were some good memories. I had some good times with Kappa Psi. The Grand Councils were always interested and fun. The province meetings were always good. I was from Province 7, but Province 7 was an asset. They were the largest province at that time in the fraternity, number-wise and influence-wise. So that was a big help and push for me going for Grand Regent. Whatever I ran for, fortunately, I was able to succeed even when I had opposition, and a lot of it had to do with the strength and the support I got from Province 7. Well, I think my involvement with the fraternity and staying with it and the challenges I have allowed me to deal with challenges in life, business-wise, family-wise, personal-wise. I think I was toughened up to where I could address it and deal with it in a logical fashion, and I think it had a lot to do with my maturity and my ability to handle problems and situations rationally. And I've always contributed Kappa Psi to a lot of my success, and that's because of the involvement that I had with them. If you read any articles in the Mass and the history of Kappa Psi, you will see where I give Kappa Psi credit for my success in the profession. Really, I would like to be remembered as the person that was able to pull the fraternity out of a deep, serious financial problem in the early '70s and get them back on ground to be successful and to move forward. I would like to think that people would acknowledge and give me the credit that I hung in there and I accomplished that during a reasonable amount of time at the request of the Executive Committee and National Officers at that time. And I think about that. We don't, like I say, we buried it at the time, and we buried it and we'll continue burying it. There's only 3 of us left living that even remember anything about it, and that's Campbell, Wells, and myself, because we were there. And eventually we're going to be gone, and then nobody will ever think about it. But if you read in some of the documentations and comments that were made, there's statements made that about due to the death of one of our executive secretaries during the early '70s, the fraternity was in some deep, serious problems, which could have been disastrous, but due to the dedication and the work of the current executive committee and certain individuals, we pulled out of it. And I think that that's something that the members should know and also be proud about, that we didn't go under. I've always been thankful to the fraternity to acknowledge the past Grand Regents. That last GCD we had a couple of years ago when he invited us all, I was very pleased and honored, and I hope that happens again. I would like to see more history being developed and exposed in the fraternity for the members to find out about, because I had a lot of history which I forwarded to you in memories and plaques and awards, and I gifted them to our local chapter that I came from in St. Louis. I didn't bring them with me to Texas, and there's a lot of good memories there, and I hope the fraternity remembers us old timers in the future, and whether they realize it or not, when we get a call or we get acknowledged or we have the opportunity to be in front of you all, it means a lot to us, especially me, I know. Thank you.